lesson of the housing unit. Again, I've condensed this a little bit, but not too much here. We got the important stuff still. And this is the last thing we're talking about is the price of rent increasing. So this is one of the downsides of renting. And then we've talked about with the house, and this is kind of actually what the last lesson was talking about, is your payment stays the same the entire time you're paying off the loan. That's the case with any loan as long as you have a fixed rate. Remember that if you go with an adjustable rate loan, then your payment can change over time and that can be risky. So rent though does increase over time, partially due to inflation and partially due to, that's just what apartment complexes do. Almost guaranteed your rent is going to go up by something every single year. So we talked about the formulas that we're going to be using. Right here, new monthly rent, yeah? So whenever you have a new rent, whenever you renew your lease, this is the formula you're going to be using. And these, again, are what the variables stand for. Being careful that, again, R has to be as a decimal. Every time we see the R, divide it by 100 before you can use it. So let's look at this real quick. So here's how the questions are going to be phrased. Jake and Gloria moved into an apartment and paying $1,900 rent per month. The landlord told them that the rent has increased 4.1% per year on average. So they're just saying, hey, just FYI, we do increase the rent every year due to inflation. We increase it by about this much, just FYI. So this first question says, express the rent Y as an exponential function of the number of years they rent the apartment. Now this sounds super fancy, but when it says to express as an exponential function, you guys should know this. Exponential, that means it has an exponent. And hey, look, this has an exponent. So all you're going to do here is when it says to express as a function, that means write an equation. If you guys remember way back when in like algebra 1, when you had to write the equation of a line and it was y equals mx plus b, and you had to leave it like that, so you left it as something like y equals 2x plus 5. That's expressing as a function. In this case, we're going to express, again, this as a function. So I'm going to copy this over here. So now it says new monthly rent. That is y. So I'm going to say y equals. Again, this is, if you want to make a note to yourself, this is the new monthly rent formula. New monthly rent formula, which again, it does say new monthly rent equals, but that is y. So I'm going to copy over the rest of it just so we have it. It's A1 plus R to the T. That's our formula right there, A1 plus R to the T. So let's look through this. What we're going to do is we're going to replace with everything that we know and then leave what we don't, and then there's our equation. So A represents the initial rent. So do me a favor, look at this question. What does it say the initial rent is? Look back up here. 1,900, this is the initial rent, so that's the A. So I don't know what Y is. It says express Y as a function. That means we're not plugging in anything for Y. But A is 1,900. Then I keep copying the formula. It says 1 plus. So I'm going to copy that. And then we need to know what R is. R is the percentage increase or decrease of rent as a decimal. So rent has increased 4.1%, but I'm not going to put 4.1. What should I put? Find it real quick. Well, we should do 4.1 divided by 100. We check it in our calculator, right? You should have gotten 0.041. If you do not do that correctly, you're going to lose points. Now, we don't know the number of years they rent the apartment. So T is going to stay put, and then look at this. That's your answer. Yeah? What this is this is a function. This is an equation we can use to estimate the rent depending on how many years you live at the apartment. So this is like our formula. We can figure out, hey, if I want to live in this apartment for 10 years, how much might it cost me in 10 years? We can plug in 10 and see what it would be. And it works for this particular apartment. Now again, with a lot of math, they are just tools for people to use to make predictions, to make estimations. It's not going to be exact, of course, But that's the point of math, is trying to predict what might happen in the future. So this is our answer. If it says express as a function, boom, that's it, yeah? You leave the t there because that tells us that's where we would plug in the number of years if we knew it. And hey, look, now we know it. It says determine the amount rent will be when they renew their lease for year 14. So year 14, that's t. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this equation we just made for this apartment, and all we're going to do is plug in 14. So take a moment, go to Desmos. I want you to plug this whole thing in here. That's a 9. This is a 4. And that's a 4 too. Plug this whole thing in. This is going to be an estimation of how much the apartment might cost after 14 years. Okay, let's see what we got here. 1, that works, 0.041 to the 14th. You should have gotten 3,003 for, there you go. So again, this is just an estimation. It's possible it might not cost that much. It's possible it might cost more. Honestly, that may or may not be realistic. Again, 14 years ago now would have been, I gotta do my math, 2007. And rent has increased a lot since 2007. A single 1-bedroom you may have been able to find for $400 in 2007. Nowadays, you're finding it for maybe $1,000. Yeah. So it's a good idea to know this stuff, that again, this is going to happen. The rent is going to increase. Okay, I want you to try it again. On this question, again, what you're going to do is just express as a function for this particular apartment. That means leave as equation. In particular, I'm going to add on here with y and t still there, because we don't know t yet, right? If you look at just the information we have right here, we don't know t. So here's our equation. We're going to plug in what we know, which is the a and the r. And then we're going to leave the y and the t. Go ahead and try it. Remember what a and r represent, leave the y and t. Okay, so y stays put. Our A is the $700, that's the initial rent. Now, careful with this again, 3.1, guys, divided by 100 every single time is 0.0. Don't make that mistake, it's a common mistake. 0.31 is 31%, so be careful. And then T, because again, what this question is asking us is create an equation that can estimate the rent after a certain number of years. So we want to be able to plug into this to get a different variable. So there's your answer, you just leave it like that, if it says express as a function. So now we want to determine the rent after year 5. So that's T, go ahead and plug the 5 in and see what you get. Well, okay, we got y equals 700, 1 plus 0.031 to the 5th. So this is again an estimation, 1 plus 0.031 to the 5th. You should have gotten 815.44. That's again relatively decent. I think I told you guys when I lived in an apartment for 2 years. I lived in the same apartment complex in 2 different apartments for 2 years each. Each time in those 2 years, they raised the rent about $300. That's not bad. 5 years only going up $115. That's pretty reasonable. Again, in 2 years, going up $300 was excessive. So that's why I bought a house, because now our payment is locked in. So all I want you to do is try this one more time. Notice that we have all this information, and then it says, what can she expect the rent to be in the 3rd year? So notice it does not say to express it as a function. It just says this part. What is going to be her rent after the 3rd year? So you still have to write the equation, even though they don't say to, but our final answer is going to be us plugging in. So go ahead and write your equation. We got the y equals a 1 minus r, plus r to the t. and then plug in your t of 3. Go ahead and try it. Okay, well, here's our equation. Y equals 850 is the A. We've got 1 plus, so once again, this is going to be 0.031. Once again, that's because it's less than 10. Anything less than 10 has a 0, right? 9% is 0.09. 90% is 0.9, so be careful. And I'm going to go ahead and already plug in the 3 because it's not asking me for the function, so I don't need to leave the t there. So 850, 1 plus 0.031 to the third. We got 931.53. And there we are, that's our rent. Now again, like I said, this is not exact math. Apartment complexes don't usually be like, okay, we are going to increase our prices every year by this percent. However, normal inflation, just like as a whole, as our economy as a whole, is about 3% a year. Some years it's higher, just kind of depends on what happens in the year. So you can expect rent prices to go up. Sometimes that might mean you just need to move to another complex and start at the bottom of the totem. They'll raise your prices. You can move somewhere else for a cheaper price. They'll raise your prices. You can move somewhere else. So that is a definite benefit of buying a house. That won't happen to you.